The steam rising from Katherine's laundry tub had scalded her fingers raw by the time Lucas Callahan rode into Laramie, Wyoming on that scorching summer day in 1878, his horse kicking up dust devils that settled over the clean white sheets she had just hung to dry. Katherine Foster cursed under her breath, watching the pristine linens turn spotted with grit. She had been scrubbing other people's clothes since dawn, her back aching from bending over the washboard, her hands pruned and cracked from the lye soap. The daughter of a former railroad worker who had died in a track-laying accident 3 years prior, Katherine had learned early that survival in the West meant working until your bones protested, and then working some more. Her mother had passed when she was only 12, leaving her to fend for herself by the time she turned 18. Now, at 23, she ran the only proper laundry service in Laramie, catering to the miners, ranchers, and businessmen who needed their shirts starched and their trousers pressed. The Cowboy dismounted near the livery stable across the street, and Katherine tried not to stare as she yanked down the ruined sheets. She would have to rewash them, and Mrs. Henderson would complain about the delay. But something about the way this stranger moved caught her attention. He was tall, built lean and strong from years of hard labor, with sun-darkened skin and hair the color of burnt amber beneath his wide-brimmed hat. When he turned toward her establishment, she quickly busied herself with the laundry basket, pretending not to notice. Lucas had been riding fence lines and herding cattle for the better part of a decade, ever since leaving his family's failing farm in Missouri at 19. Now 26, he had saved enough money to finally buy into a small ranch operation just outside Laramie. The previous owner had mentioned there was a laundress in town, and after 3 months on the trail, every piece of clothing Lucas owned desperately needed attention. He had tried washing his own things in streams and rivers, but they remained stiff with dirt and sweat no matter how hard he scrubbed. He approached the small building with the hand-painted sign reading Foster Laundry Services and knocked on the doorframe. Katherine appeared from the back room, wisps of dark brown hair escaping from the tight bun at the nape of her neck. Her green eyes met his for a brief moment before she looked away, tucking a strand behind her ear. "Can I help you?" Her voice was steady, professional, though she felt suddenly aware of how rumpled and worn she must look after a full day of work. "Yes, madam. I just arrived in town, and I have a considerable amount of washing that needs doing. If you are taking new customers, that is." Lucas removed his hat, revealing the lighter skin of his forehead where the sun had not reached. His brown eyes held a warmth that surprised her. "I am always taking new customers. That is how I stay in business." Katherine wiped her hands on her apron, leaving wet streaks across the already damp fabric. "You can bring your things in tomorrow morning. I charge by the pound, and if you need mending, that is extra." "Actually, I was hoping you might have time today. I know it is late notice, but I would pay extra for the rush." Lucas pulled a leather pouch from his pocket, the coins inside jingling softly. Katherine hesitated. She still had the Henderson sheets to rewash, plus a pile of shirts from the saloon that needed scrubbing. But she also needed the money. The rent on her small room above the laundry was due in 3 days, and she was still short. "All right. Bring your things in and I will see what I can manage." Lucas returned to his horse and retrieved 2 large saddlebags bulging with soiled clothing. When he set them on her counter, Katherine nearly gasped at the weight. Every item inside was caked with trail dust, grass stains, and what looked like axle grease. "You said you just arrived?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Been on the trail for 3 months, helping drive a herd up from Texas. Did not have much opportunity for proper washing." He offered an apologetic smile. "If it is too much." "No, I can handle it." but it will cost you double my usual rate, and I cannot have it ready until tomorrow evening at the earliest." "Fair enough. I will pay half now and half when I collect them." Lucas counted out the coins carefully, placing them in her palm. His fingers brushed against hers for the briefest moment, and Katherine felt an unexpected jolt run up her arm. She pulled away quickly, depositing the money in her lockbox. After he left, Katherine spread out his clothes on her work table. The smell of horse, leather, and campfire smoke clung to every piece. She filled her largest tub with water from the pump out back, heating it over the fire until steam rose in clouds that made the small room feel like a sweat lodge. As she scrubbed the first shirt against the washboard, working the soap deep into the fibers, she found herself thinking about the cowboy's kind eyes and the respectful way he had spoken to her. Most men in Laramie treated her like a servant or worse, as if being a laundress made her somehow less worthy of common courtesy. She worked late into the night, long after the sun had set, and the saloon across the street filled with raucous laughter and piano music. Her arms burned with exhaustion as she wrung out the last pair of trousers and hung them on the line stretched across her workroom. Tomorrow she would need to iron everything, but for tonight she was done. The next morning brought its usual parade of customers. Mr. Peterson from the general store dropped off his weekly bundle. The banker's wife, Mrs. Whitmore, complained that her husband's collars were not stiff enough, though Katherine knew she starched them more than necessary. By noon, Katherine had barely made a dent in Lucas's pile of clothes, and she still needed to iron them all before evening. She was pressing one of his shirts, marveling at the broad shoulders and long sleeves that spoke of his tall frame, when the door opened. Katherine looked up, expecting another customer, but instead found Lucas himself standing in the doorway. "I know you said tomorrow evening, but I wondered if I could sit and wait for a spell. The boarding house I am staying at is loud, and I am not used to so much noise after months on the open range." He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. Katherine considered sending him away. She did not usually allow customers to watch her work. But something in his demeanor made her relent. He seemed genuinely uncomfortable, not forward or presumptuous. "You can sit over there if you stay quiet and let me work." She gestured to a wooden chair in the corner, the one she collapsed into during rare breaks. Lucas settled into the chair, stretching his long legs out in front of him. For a while, he simply watched her work, mesmerized by the rhythmic motion of the iron gliding over fabric, the careful way she folded each piece after inspecting it for any remaining spots. The silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. Finally, he spoke. "You do good work. I can tell you take pride in it." Katherine paused, the iron hovering above a shirt sleeve. "It is honest work, better than some alternatives for a woman alone in a town like this." "You have no family here." "No. My father died 3 years ago in a railroad accident. My mother passed when I was young." She resumed ironing, pressing perhaps a bit harder than necessary. She did not usually share personal information with customers, but something about Lucas made her want to talk. "I have been on my own since I was 20, built this business from nothing. That takes strength and courage." Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I left home when I was 19. My parents had too many mouths to feed and not enough land to work. Figured I could make my own way out here." "Have you?" Katherine met his eyes, finding genuine curiosity in her question. "I think so. I just bought a quarter share in a ranch outside town. It is not much, but it is mine. Or will be, once I work off the debt." Pride colored his voice, mixed with a hint of nervousness about the venture. They continued talking as Katherine worked through the rest of his clothes. She learned he had two younger sisters and a brother back in Missouri, that he preferred sleeping under stars to sleeping in beds, that he had a talent for training horses. He learned she could read and write better than most men in town, that she had taught herself basic arithmetic to manage her business, that she loved the smell of clean linen fresh off the line. By the time Katherine finished the last piece, the sun was setting and they had been talking for hours. She stacked his clothes neatly, tying them with string so he could carry them easily. I added extra starch to your collars, and I mended 2 shirts that had tears. No extra charge for the mending. She handed him the bundle, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. I appreciate it. You do fine work, Miss Foster. Lucas counted out the remaining payment, then added an extra coin. For your time and the conversation. That is too much. Consider it payment for listening to a lonely cowboy ramble. It has been a long time since I had a real conversation with anyone. His smile reached his eyes, creating creases at the corners that suggested he smiled often, or used to before the trail wore him down. After he left, Katherine stood in the doorway watching him walk toward the boarding house, his bundle under one arm. She told herself not to expect him back. Cowboys came and went through Laramie all the time. Just because he bought into a ranch did not mean he would stay. Men were unreliable, especially out here where opportunities and disasters could uproot a life overnight. But 3 days later, Lucas appeared again, this time with a much smaller bundle. When Katherine gave him a questioning look, he shrugged. I spilled coffee all over my good shirt this morning. Thought you might be able to get the stain out. Katherine took the shirt, examining the dark brown stain spreading across the front. Coffee is difficult but not impossible. I will need to soak it overnight. That is fine. I have others I can wear. He made no move to leave, instead glancing at the chair he had occupied before. Katherine felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. The chair is free if you want it. This became their pattern over the following weeks. Lucas would find reasons to bring her laundry, sometimes legitimate but often transparently manufactured. A shirt with a tiny spot of mud. Trousers that he claimed smelled of horse despite looking perfectly clean. Katherine pretended not to notice the thin excuses, because she found herself looking forward to his visits. He told her about the ranch, how he and his partners were trying to build up their herd before winter. She told him about the challenges of running a business as a single woman, how some customers tried to cheat her or refused to pay, assuming she had no recourse. Lucas's jaw tightened when she mentioned the banker's son who had suggested she could pay off her rent in ways other than cash. Did he hurt you? The protective edge in Lucas's voice surprised them both. No, I threatened him with my iron. He has not bothered me since. Katherine touched the heavy flat iron on her stove, its weight a comfort. I can take care of myself. I do not doubt that. But you should not have to deal with men like that. Katherine shrugged, though his concern warmed something inside her chest. This is the world we live in. Women like me learn to handle ourselves or we do not survive. One evening in early October, as the first hints of cold began creeping into the Wyoming air, Lucas arrived without any laundry at all. Katherine looked up from the dress she was mending for the mayor's daughter, her needle pausing mid-stitch. No washing today. She asked, trying to keep her tone light though her heart had started beating faster. No, I came to ask you something. Lucas removed his hat, working the brim between his fingers. There is a dance at the town hall this Saturday. I wondered if you might attend with me. Katherine set down her mending, smoothing her skirt to buy herself time to think. She had not been to a social gathering in years. Most of the respectable women in Laramie treated her with barely concealed disdain, seeing her manual labor as beneath them even as they relied on her services. And dancing with Lucas in public would start talk, the kind of gossip that could damage what little reputation she had built. But she also realized she wanted to go. She wanted to wear something other than her work dress and apron. She wanted to feel Lucas's hand on her waist as they moved to music. She wanted to pretend, just for one evening, that she was not alone in the world. Yes, I would like that. Lucas's face broke into a wide smile, transforming his usual serious expression into something almost boyish. Really? I thought you might say no. I almost did. But I decided I have been practical and cautious long enough. Sometimes a person needs to do something just because it sounds pleasant. I will pick you up at 7 on Saturday then. Wear something suitable for dancing. He caught himself, flushing slightly. Not that I am telling you what to wear. I just meant. I understood what you meant. Katherine allowed herself a small smile. I will be ready. After he left, she climbed the narrow stairs to her small room above the laundry. Her wardrobe held mostly work dresses and one decent outfit for church, which she rarely attended anymore. Nothing suitable for a dance. But tucked in the bottom of her trunk was the dress her mother had worn to her own wedding, carefully preserved through years of moving and struggling. Katherine pulled it out, shaking free the wrinkles. The fabric was a deep blue, simple but well made, with small pearl buttons down the back. She spent her rare free moments over the next few days altering the dress to fit her frame, letting out seams and adjusting the hem. On Saturday afternoon, she closed the laundry early, ignoring the irritated knock of a late customer. She heated water for a proper bath, washing away the ever-present smell of soap and steam that clung to her skin. She brushed her hair until it shone, pinning it up in a softer style than her usual severe bun. When Lucas arrived precisely at 7, Katherine saw surprise and admiration flash across his face. He had cleaned up as well, wearing dark trousers and a pressed white shirt she had laundered herself, his hair still damp from washing. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. The walk to the town hall took only 10 minutes, but Katherine felt every eye in Laramie tracking their progress. Mrs. Whitmore stood in front of the milliner's shop, her mouth falling open. The banker's son glared from the saloon doorway. Katherine lifted her chin and kept walking, her hand resting lightly on Lucas's arm. The town hall was already crowded when they arrived, the air thick with the smell of perfume, pomade, and the corn whiskey someone had smuggled in despite the dance being officially dry. A small group of musicians occupied one corner, sawing out a lively tune on fiddles and guitars. Lucas led Katherine to the refreshment table, pouring her a cup of weak punch while keeping one hand protectively at the small of her back. "I should warn you, I am not the best dancer," he admitted as they moved toward the floor. "I know the basic steps, but nothing fancy. That makes 2 of us. I have not danced since before my father died." They joined the other couples in a simple reel, and Katherine found that her body remembered the movements even if her mind had forgotten. Lucas was true to his word about his dancing abilities, occasionally stepping on her toes or turning the wrong direction, but his grip on her hand was sure and his apologies genuine. Katherine laughed more than she had in years, feeling lighter than she thought possible. Between dances, Lucas introduced her to his ranch partners. Tom Brennan was older, grizzled, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled at his wife, a sturdy woman named Martha who ran their household with cheerful efficiency. Jake Morrison was younger, close to Lucas's age, with a quick wit and an easy laugh. Both men treated Katherine with respect, asking about her business and seeming genuinely interested in her answers. "Lucas talks about you all the time," Martha said when the men went to get more refreshments. "Tom says he has never seen Lucas so smitten with anyone." Katherine felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We are just friends." "Honey, men do not look at friends the way that man looks at you. He is courting you proper, even if he has not said the words yet." Martha patted her arm knowingly. "And from the way you watch him when you think no one is looking, I would say the feeling is mutual." Before Katherine could respond, Lucas returned, and the musicians struck up a waltz. This required closer contact than the reels, and Katherine felt her breath catch as Lucas placed his hand on her waist, drawing her nearer than they had been before. They moved together slowly, finding a rhythm that worked for their inexperience. "I am glad you came tonight," Lucas said softly, his breath stirring the loose tendrils of hair near her ear. "So am I, though I imagine this will give the gossips plenty to talk about." "Let them talk. I do not care what they think." His hand tightened slightly on her waist. "Katherine, I know we have not known each other long, but I have never met anyone like you before. You are strong and independent, and you do not need anyone to take care of you, which somehow makes me want to be around you even more." Katherine's heart hammered in her chest. "Lucas, I am not saying this right. What I mean is, I would like to keep seeing you properly, not just bringing you laundry as an excuse to talk." He met her eyes, his expression earnest and vulnerable. "Would you consider letting me court you?" She thought about all the reasons she should say no. She had built a life that depended on no one but herself. Depending on someone meant risking loss, and she had already lost everyone she loved. Lucas was a cowboy, a man who made his living from the land in an unforgiving territory where fortunes could turn on a moment's bad weather or bad luck. There were no guarantees, no promises that could be kept in the face of the West's harsh realities. But she also thought about how empty her room felt at night, how tired she was of facing every challenge alone. She thought about Lucas's kindness, the way he listened when she talked, how his presence made her feel seen as a whole person rather than just a laundress. Maybe strength did not always mean standing alone. Maybe sometimes it meant having the courage to let someone stand beside you. "Yes," she said, the word barely audible above the music. "I would like that." Lucas's smile could have lit the entire hall. He pulled her slightly closer as they continued to waltz, and Katherine allowed herself to rest her head briefly against his shoulder, breathing in the clean scent of the soap she had used on his shirt mixed with his own unique smell of leather and horses and open sky. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of music and laughter and stolen moments of conversation. When Lucas walked her home well after midnight, the streets of Laramie were quiet except for the sounds drifting from the saloons. He stopped at her door, still holding her hand. "Thank you for tonight. I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed myself so much. Neither can I." Katherine squeezed his hand gently. "When will I see you again? Is tomorrow too soon? I have the afternoon free. I could take you for a ride if you like, show you some of the country around the ranch. I would enjoy that, though I should warn you I have not been on a horse in years. I have a gentle mare that would be perfect for you. I will bring her by after lunch." Lucas hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to Katherine's cheek, lingering just long enough for her to feel the warmth of his lips. "Good night, Katherine." She touched her cheek after he left, standing in the doorway until his figure disappeared around a corner. Then she climbed the stairs to her room, carefully hanging the blue dress and preparing for bed. But sleep was long in coming, her mind replaying every moment of the evening, every word Lucas had spoken, every time their eyes had met across the crowded dance floor. True to his word, Lucas arrived the next afternoon with 2 horses, the promised mare and his own gelding. Katherine had changed into her most practical dress and sturdy boots, tying her hair back with a ribbon. The mare was indeed gentle, standing patiently while Lucas helped Katherine mount, his hand steadying her as she found her balance in the saddle. They rode out of town at an easy walk, following a trail that wound through grassland beginning to brown with the approaching winter. Lucas pointed out landmarks, explaining the boundaries of his ranch's grazing territory, and showing her the creek where they watered the cattle. His knowledge of the land was impressive, noting details Katherine would have never observed about the terrain, the vegetation, the best places for shelter when storms rolled in from the mountains. They stopped near the creek, dismounting to let the horses drink. Katherine sat on a flat rock, watching the water flow past while Lucas stood nearby, one hand resting on his horse's neck. "It is beautiful out here," she said. "Harsh but beautiful. I forget that sometimes, staying in town all the time. You could come out whenever you wanted. I would be happy to bring you." Lucas sat beside her on the rock, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "In fact, I would like you to think of this place as somewhere you could always come, somewhere you belong." Katherine turned to look at him. "Lucas, we only just started courting last night. You cannot make promises like that." "Why not? I know my own mind. I have known since the day I walked into your laundry that you were someone special, someone worth building a life with." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I am not a rich man, Katherine. I probably never will be. Ranching is hard work with no guarantees. But I am honest and I work hard, and I would spend every day trying to make you happy if you would let me. You barely know me. Then let me know you better. Let me court you properly, take you to more dances, show you more of the ranch. Just give me a chance to prove I am serious about this." Katherine wanted to protest that it was too fast, too uncertain, but she found herself nodding instead, tightening her grip on his hand. "All right. But slowly, Lucas. I need time to be sure." "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." Over the following weeks, Lucas made good on his promise. He called on Katherine regularly, sometimes bringing laundry but more often just coming to talk. On her rare free afternoons, he took her riding or walking through the countryside. He introduced her to more people from the ranching community, families who were warmer and more accepting than many of the townspeople Katherine dealt with daily. He also began helping her with the heavier work around the laundry. When he discovered she was struggling to repair her water pump, he spent an entire afternoon taking it apart and fixing the problem. When a drunk cowboy broke one of her windows, Lucas not only replaced the glass but installed stronger shutters. He never asked for payment or thanks, simply doing what needed doing and then staying for coffee and conversation. Katherine found herself relying on him, looking forward to his visits, missing him when several days passed without seeing him. It terrified her, this growing dependence, but she also felt something shifting inside her chest, walls she had built carefully crumbling bit by bit. Winter arrived early that year, with heavy snows by mid-November. The cold made Katherine's work harder, the water freezing in her tubs overnight, her hands cracking and bleeding from constant exposure to harsh weather and harsher soap. Lucas worried about her, seeing how exhausted she looked, how thin she had become from skipping meals to save money during the slow winter months when fewer customers needed laundry services. One particularly brutal evening in December, when the temperature had dropped below zero and wind howled through every crack in the building, Lucas arrived to find Katherine sitting on the floor beside her stove, shivering despite the fire. She had run out of wood that morning and had been too proud to ask for help. "Katherine, why did you not send for me?" Lucas immediately went to work, stoking the fire and adding the wood he had brought with him, having suspected she might be running low. "I can take care of myself," she said through chattering teeth, but the words lacked conviction. Taking care of yourself and accepting help are not mutually exclusive. Lucas pulled her to her feet, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. You are freezing. When did you last eat? I had bread this morning. That was 12 hours ago. He guided her to the chair, then searched her small kitchen area until he found eggs and half a loaf of stale bread. He cooked while she sat, too cold and tired to protest, and then made her eat every bite of the meal he prepared. "This is foolish, Katherine," he said gently, kneeling beside her chair once she had finished eating. "You do not have to struggle like this, not anymore. I have always struggled. This is no different, but it could be. It should be." Lucas took both her hands in his, rubbing them gently to warm them. "Marry me." Katherine's eyes widened. "What? Marry me? I know it is sudden, and I know you wanted more time, but I cannot stand watching you suffer when I could help, when we could help each other." His voice was urgent, passionate. "I love you, Katherine. I have loved you since you threatened to charge me double for my trail dirty clothes. Marry me and come live at the ranch. You would not have to give up your work if you did not want to. We could set up a laundry there, serve the ranching families who have to travel all the way to town now. Or you could do something different entirely. Or nothing at all except keep me company and let me take care of you for a change. Lucas, I." Katherine tried to pull her hands away, but he held firm. "I know you are scared. I know you have survived on your own for so long that depending on someone feels dangerous. But marriage is supposed to be a partnership. I am not asking you to become helpless or give up who you are. I am asking you to let me stand beside you, to face whatever comes together instead of alone." Tears spilled down Katherine's cheeks, startling them both. She had not cried in years, had taught herself that tears were a luxury she could not afford. But now they came freely, all the loneliness and fear and exhaustion of the past 3 years pouring out at once. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried against his chest. He did not try to quiet her or tell her everything would be fine. He just held her, one hand stroking her back in slow, soothing circles. When the tears finally subsided, Katherine pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I do love you. I have been so afraid to admit it, even to myself, but I do. Then marry me, please." She thought about her mother's wedding dress, still carefully folded in her trunk. She thought about the empty room above the laundry where she slept alone every night. She thought about Lucas's ranch, the way sunlight sparkled on the creek, the warmth in Martha Brennan's eyes when she looked at her husband. She thought about partnership, about building something together, about no longer having to be strong enough for 2 people because there would finally be 2 people sharing the burden. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Lucas's kiss was gentle at first, reverent, as if she were something precious he was afraid of breaking. But Katherine pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt, and the kiss deepened, becoming a promise and a claim and a celebration all at once. They married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony at the church, with Tom and Martha Brennan standing as witnesses. Katherine wore her mother's blue dress, and Lucas wore his best suit, pressed and starched by Katherine's own hands. The preacher who performed the ceremony was elderly and kind, his voice cracking on the vows but his words sincere. Katherine moved to the ranch the day after the wedding, packing up her few possessions and saying goodbye to the small room that had been her whole world for 3 years. Lucas had prepared a space for her in the ranch house he shared with Tom and Martha, a large bedroom with a real bed and a window overlooking the grazing land. But more importantly, he had also converted one of the outbuildings into a fully equipped laundry, complete with a large stove, multiple tubs and lines for drying. "I meant what I said about you not having to give up your work," he explained as he showed her around. "Martha and several other ranch women have already said they would love to hire you, and the pay would be just as good as what you made in town without having to deal with difficult customers." Katherine ran her hand along the new washboard, tears threatening again. No one had ever done something like this for her before, had ever thought about what would make her happy and then made it happen. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This is perfect." Life on the ranch was different from anything Katherine had experienced before. The work was still hard, but it was shared work. Martha helped with the laundry on busy days, and Katherine helped Martha with cooking and preserving food. The men worked the cattle and horses, but everyone pitched in during crisis moments like when a storm hit early or a cow had trouble birthing. Katherine learned to ride properly, going out with Lucas to check fence lines or move cattle between grazing areas. She learned to read the weather by watching the sky and feeling the wind shift. She learned the names of all the horses and cattle, which ones were stubborn and which ones were gentle. She learned that home was not a place but a feeling, and she felt it every time Lucas smiled at her across the dinner table or pulled her close beside the fire on cold nights. Their physical relationship deepened slowly, with care and patience. Lucas was mindful of Katherine's relative inexperience, taking his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Their wedding night had been gentle, awkward in some moments but tender throughout, and they grew more comfortable with each other as weeks passed. Katherine discovered she enjoyed the intimacy, the closeness, the way Lucas looked at her as if she were the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Spring arrived with its usual chaos of work, calving season keeping everyone busy around the clock. Katherine helped where she could, bringing food and coffee to the men working through the night, sometimes assisting with difficult births when extra hands were needed. One morning in April, after a particularly exhausting week, Katherine woke feeling violently ill. Martha found her retching behind the barn and immediately understood. "How long since your last monthly?" Katherine calculated, feeling foolish for not having realized sooner. 2 months, maybe closer to 3. I thought it was just stress from the busy season. "Honey, you are pregnant." Martha's face broke into a wide smile. "Have you told Lucas?" "I just figured it out myself." "Well, you had better tell him soon before he worries himself sick over you looking so peaked." Katherine told Lucas that evening after dinner, pulling him aside while Tom and Martha cleaned up. She had worried about how to say it, what words to use, but in the end, she simply stated the fact plainly. "I am going to have a baby. Sometime in the fall, I think." Lucas stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then his face split into the widest smile she had ever seen. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby? Really? We are going to have a baby?" "Yes, really. Are you happy?" "Happy, Katherine, I am beyond happy this is." He set her down carefully as if she had suddenly become fragile. "This is everything. You are everything." The pregnancy progressed normally, despite Katherine continuing to work through the summer. She kept up with the laundry as long as she could, though Lucas eventually insisted she stop taking in new customers when she grew too large to comfortably bend over the tubs. She spent those last weeks sewing baby clothes and preparing the small room adjacent to their bedroom as a nursery. Labor came on a cool September evening, starting as a backache that gradually intensified into something demanding attention. Martha assisted the birth along with a midwife from a neighboring ranch, while Lucas paced outside the bedroom, driving Tom nearly crazy with his anxious energy. The baby was born just after midnight, healthy and loud and perfect. A boy, with dark hair like Katherine's and Lucas's brown eyes. They named him James after Lucas's father, with a middle name of Thomas in honor of Tom Brennan. Lucas held his son with tears streaming down his face, cradling the tiny bundle as if it were made of glass. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe this is real." Katherine watched them from the bed, exhausted but content in a way she had never known was possible. She had spent so many years alone, believing she had to be sufficient unto herself. Now she was part of something larger, a family built on love and respect and partnership. The first year of James's life was a blur of sleepless nights and constant work, but it was also filled with moments of piercing joy. His first smile, his first laugh, his first attempts to crawl across the floor while the adults worked. Lucas proved to be a devoted father, taking James out to see the horses and cattle, singing him songs in a surprisingly pleasant voice, pacing the floor at night when the baby cried. Katherine gradually returned to taking in laundry, working around James's schedule with Martha's help. Several ranch families had come to depend on her services, and she enjoyed the work, the satisfaction of seeing stained fabric come clean, the meditative rhythm of scrubbing and rinsing and pressing. One afternoon in late spring, nearly 2 years after their marriage, Katherine was hanging washing on the outdoor line while James played nearby with a wooden horse Lucas had carved. Lucas rode up earlier than expected, dismounting quickly and striding toward her with purpose in his step. "I have news," he said, excitement coloring his voice. "Tom wants to retire. He and Martha are planning to move to Oregon to be near her sister. They are offering to sell us their share of the ranch." Katherine set down the wet shirt she was holding. "Can we afford that?" "Barely. It would take everything we have saved and then some. We would need to borrow money from the bank, but it would make us full partners with Jake instead of junior partners with Tom. We could make decisions about the ranch's future, expand the herd, maybe buy more land. It is a risk. Everything worth doing is a risk, but I think we could make it work, together." He took her hands, heedless of the soap and water. "What do you think? Are you willing to take this chance with me?" Katherine looked at their son playing contentedly in the grass, at the ranch house that had become her home, at the man who had taken a lonely laundress and given her a family. She thought about how far she had come from that exhausted woman scrubbing clothes in a small building in Laramie, surviving but not really living. "Yes, let us do it." The purchase went through that summer, and Tom and Martha departed for Oregon with promises to write and visit. Lucas and Katherine worked harder than ever to make the expanded ranch successful, putting in 18-hour days during busy seasons. But the work felt different now, purposeful, building something that would last beyond their own lives. James grew into a bright, energetic child, spending his days following his father around the ranch or helping his mother with simpler tasks. He learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, showing Lucas's natural way with horses. When James was 3, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, the sickness lasting longer, her energy depleted by chasing after an active toddler while her body worked to create new life. Lucas worried constantly, insisting she rest more, doing double duty with both ranch work and household tasks. Their daughter arrived in February during a blizzard that trapped them all inside for 3 days. The midwife could not make it through the snow, so Martha, who had returned for a visit, assisted the birth with Lucas's help. Katherine Francis, they named her, Katie for short. She had Lucas's auburn hair and Katherine's green eyes, and a placid temperament that was a relief after James's constant motion. Life settled into a new rhythm with 2 children. James started learning his letters and numbers, showing a quick mind and curious nature. Katie grew into a sweet-natured toddler who loved helping her mother with laundry, standing on a stool to reach the tubs and scrubbing clothes with a child-sized washboard Lucas made for her. The ranch prospered slowly, good years balancing out bad ones. They never became wealthy, but they were comfortable, the bank loan gradually paid down, the herd growing steadily. Lucas proved to have a good head for business, knowing when to sell and when to hold, when to take risks and when to play it safe. Katherine continued her laundry work, though on a smaller scale as the children grew. She found she enjoyed the balance, having work that was hers even as she cared for her family. Lucas never questioned it, never suggested she should give it up, understanding that it was part of who she was. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Katherine back to the spot by the creek where he had first proposed. The children stayed with Jake Morrison and his new wife for the afternoon, giving them rare time alone. "I have been thinking about that first day I walked into your laundry," Lucas said as they sat on the same flat rock where they had sat a decade before. "My clothes were filthy, and I was dusty and tired and probably smelled like a horse." "You definitely smelled like a horse," Katherine agreed with a smile. "But you took me on anyway, did not turn me away even though I was clearly going to be more work than you needed. And then you let me sit in your workroom and talk to you, even though you had every reason to send me away. You were a paying customer. Of course I took you on. We both know there was more to it than that." Lucas turned to face her fully, taking her hands. "You were the bravest person I had ever met, building a life from nothing, surviving on your own in a place that did not make it easy for women like you. I fell in love with that strength. But what I did not realize then was that I would also get to see your softness, your kindness, your capacity for love. You gave me a family, Katherine. You gave me a home. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have." Tears pricked Katherine's eyes. "You gave me the same. I was so alone before you, Lucas. I had convinced myself that alone was enough, that I did not need anyone, but you showed me a different way. You washed my clothes when I could not, metaphorically speaking, and somehow you washed away all my fear too." They kissed by the creek as the sun began to set. Two people who had found each other against the odds and built something lasting. More years passed, marked by the usual rhythms of ranch life. Good summers and harsh winters, celebrations and losses, growth and change. James grew tall and lanky, skilled with horses and cattle, eventually taking on more responsibility around the ranch. Katie remained gentle-natured, but revealed a sharp mind for numbers, helping Katherine manage the business side of both the laundry and the ranch accounts. When James turned 18, Lucas formally made him a partner in the ranch, recognizing his hard work and dedication. Jake Morrison had married and started his own family, eventually buying land adjacent to theirs, their children growing up together like cousins. Katherine kept working well into her 40s, only gradually scaling back as her hands developed arthritis from decades of harsh soap and cold water. She had trained several younger women in the area, passing on her skills and helping them establish their own small laundry businesses. Her reputation remained strong, known for quality work and fair dealing. One evening in late autumn, after the children were grown and the ranch was running smoothly under James's increasingly capable management, Katherine and Lucas sat on the porch watching the sun set over the grazing land. They did this most evenings now, a quiet ritual at the end of busy days. "Do you ever regret it?" Lucas asked suddenly. "Marrying me, leaving town, all of it?" Katherine looked at him in surprise. "Not once. Not ever. Why would you ask that?" "Sometimes I wonder if you miss the independence you had before. You were your own boss, beholden to no one. Now you are tied to this ranch, to me, to the family we built. Lucas Callahan, look at me." Katherine waited until he met her eyes. "Being married to you did not take away my independence. It gave me something better: partnership, love, a family. Do you regret marrying a laundress who came with nothing but work-worn hands and a stubborn streak? Never. You brought me everything that matters." He pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Years continued to unfold. James married a woman from a neighboring ranch, a capable young lady named Sarah who quickly became like a daughter to Katherine. They had children of their own, 2 boys and a girl, expanding the family further. Katie showed no interest in marriage, instead focusing on expanding the ranch's operations and eventually buying out Jake Morrison's share when he decided to retire, making the ranch entirely a family operation. Katherine became a grandmother with all the joy and indulgence that role entailed. She taught her grandchildren the same skills she had taught her own children, but she also spoiled them in ways she had never been able to afford with James and Katie. Lucas built them toys and took them riding and told them stories of the old days. As they moved into their 60s, Katherine and Lucas gradually handed more responsibilities to James and Katie, stepping into advisory roles rather than active management. They traveled some, visiting Martha in Oregon before she passed, touring parts of the West they had never seen. But they always returned to the ranch, to the land they had built their life on. On a warm summer day, not long after their 40th wedding anniversary, Lucas found Katherine in what had once been her laundry building, now mostly used for storage. She was going through old things, sorting and organizing, preparing to convert the space into a workshop for the grandchildren. "Look what I found," she said, holding up a shirt. "Your shirt from the first laundry you brought me. I kept it all these years for some reason." Lucas took the garment, examining it with a smile. "I remember that shirt. I was so nervous walking into your shop that day. You looked exhausted and beautiful and completely self-sufficient, and I thought there was no way someone like you would ever be interested in someone like me. I thought you were kind. That was rare enough to notice." Katherine leaned against him, his arm coming around her naturally. "And you kept coming back, finding excuses to see me. I pretended not to notice, but I looked forward to it every time. Best decision I ever made, bringing you my laundry." Lucas kissed the top of her head. "You know what I think? I think we should tell the grandchildren our story, how a cowboy washed a laundress's clothes and won her heart. You got the order wrong. I washed your clothes first. Metaphorically, I washed yours. I took care of you when you needed it, the way you had taken care of everyone else." He turned her to face him. "We took care of each other. That is what matters." Katherine reached up to touch his face, now weathered and lined but still dear to her. "Tell them that. Tell them about partnership and respect and choosing to stand together even when it is hard. Tell them about love that builds rather than diminishes." "I will. We will tell them together." The sun streamed through the window of the old laundry building, dust motes dancing in the light. Outside, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their laughter carrying on the wind. The ranch spread around them, a testament to decades of work and love and commitment. Katherine thought about the woman she had been, alone in Laramie, her hands raw from scrubbing other people's clothes, too proud and too scared to accept help. She thought about the moment Lucas had walked through her door, dusty and trail-worn, asking for her services. She had not known then that she was meeting her future, the man who would teach her that strength could exist alongside vulnerability, that accepting love did not mean losing independence. They walked back to the house together, hand in hand, their steps slower than they once were, but their grip on each other still firm. That evening, surrounded by children and grandchildren, they told their story as the sun set over the Wyoming landscape. They told of a cowboy and a laundress who found each other in a small frontier town, of the courtship built on respect and genuine affection, of the family they created together. The grandchildren listened, wide-eyed, as if it were a fairy tale. But Katherine and Lucas knew it was something better than a fairy tale. It was real, built on hard work and compromise and choosing each other every day for 40 years. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely true. As the evening deepened and the children were put to bed, Katherine and Lucas retired to their own room, the one with the window overlooking the land they had worked together. They prepared for bed with the ease of long practice, comfortable with each other in ways that only decades of intimacy could create. "I love you," Lucas said, as he did every night before they slept. "Today and always." "I love you too," Katherine replied, as she had replied thousands of times before, the words never losing their meaning. They lay together in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Cattle lowing in the distance, the creak of the house around them, the soft breathing of a marriage well lived. Katherine had learned, over all these years, that the greatest strength was not in standing alone but in choosing the right person to stand with. Lucas had taught her that accepting love did not diminish her, but expanded her world into something richer and fuller than she could have created alone. She had scrubbed other people's clothes for years, her hands growing rough and worn from the work. But Lucas had washed away her loneliness, her fear, her belief that she had to face everything alone. He had won her heart not through grand gestures but through consistent kindness, genuine respect, and a love that had proven itself day after day, year after year. As sleep claimed them both, Katherine's last thought was one of gratitude. Gratitude for the dusty cowboy who had walked into her laundry shop so many years ago. Gratitude for the life they had built, the children they had raised, the love that had sustained them through every hardship. Gratitude for having the courage to say yes when Lucas asked her to marry him, to trust him when trust was hard, to open her heart when opening it meant risking everything. The ranch continued on around them. The work never truly finished, but always worthwhile. Their children and grandchildren carried forward what Katherine and Lucas had started, building on the foundation of partnership and respect that had been demonstrated for them every day. And in that house on that ranch in Wyoming, two people who had found each other against all odds slept peacefully, their hands still clasped together even in sleep, their story complete and beautiful and real. The years ahead would bring more changes, more challenges, more moments of joy and sorrow. But Katherine and Lucas faced them together, as they had faced everything since that day in Laramie, when a cowboy brought his dirty laundry to a woman who needed someone to care for her as much as she cared for everyone else. Their love story was not about rescue or being saved. It was about two strong people choosing to be stronger together. It was about a laundress who scrubbed other people's clothes, finding a cowboy who saw her worth and showed his love through action rather than just words. It was about building a life together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of kindness and respect and love at a time. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.